Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 4, titled The Foundling, has been released on Disney+. We're going to get into the major beats of the episode, what we liked about it, what we didn't like, and we're going to do that right now on the Sundowners Club. Welcome, I'm your host, Sean, co-host Sterling. So, Sterling, Episode 4 of The Mandalorian Season 3 just hit, and we've had a chance to watch it, and I have some concerns about where the season's going. I had, up until now, the first two seasons of Mandalorian, I enjoyed just about every episode of the series and didn't question the writing, didn't question the plot or the direction. And I found myself...
You mean before this season?
Before this season. And I found myself, after the last two episodes, starting to question where I think this whole thing is going. And I know we didn't cover episode 3, so we can spend a minute or two on what we saw in episode 3 and not do a total recap on that, because really it was probably the worst episode of The Mandalorian.
I'd say so.
I think in the 2.5 seasons that we've had so far. But overall, first 4 episodes, before we get into the details of episode 4, The Foundling, what do you think about what you've seen so far? We're 4 episodes in, so we're halfway into season 3.
I'd say just kind of mid quality. It's not the
average.
worst. Yeah, very average. Which is sad because that's kind of supposed to be, the bright spot in Star Wars. It's the Mandalorian, and I think ratings are coming out. It's not doing very well.
Well, do you think that's for the Mandalorian itself, or do you think it's a combination of factors?
I think it's just Star Wars has been on a downward spiral, and I think people are just tuning out.
People aren't excited.
I don't think they care. I think Obi-Wan did a lot of damage to the brand because that's where a lot of people were really passionate about it, and because they were really excited about that show, and I think they really dropped the ball on that, and I just don't think people are really excited for it anymore.
I think it's a combination of things that have added up, and
there's less Disney Plus subscribers now as well. That's
right.
That's another thing.
Yeah. There's more competition. There's been so much chaos and disorganization coming out of Lucasfilm over probably since right around the time after Rogue One and The Force Awakens, where just one project after another, where director steps in, director steps out, writer steps in, writer steps out. Movies go over budget, get delayed, have to be chopped up. Series, you think they're going to be one thing and there's something different. I think it's all added up. Gina Carano being let go and the fans being even more divided around, things like that. I think it's all added up to a general sense of just they're tired of it, right? And so there's a lack of excitement. Now you have the show come out and it's gotten out of the gates a little slow. Like you said, average would be a good word, but it feels less than that because it needs to be really successful, and it's not, at least the first 4 episodes. And so let's talk real quick about episode 3 because we did a video on it and we had some technical difficulties and weren't allowed to release that. But we'll just talk about that for just a second. In episode 3, we had the after effects of Bo-Katan saving Din from the waters on Mandalore, and she's seen the Mythosaur, and so she asked Din if he saw anything in the waters, and he says he didn't, and so she keeps that to herself. And we think we're going to have this episode where we really explore that, but then after a couple of minutes, it cuts to Coruscant, and we have Pershing and Elia Kane, and they're these 2 sub-characters that aren't bad in of themselves, but they spent almost 40 minutes on these characters.
Yeah, you spent way too much time on them, and I don't think either of those actors are good enough to carry that. They're trying to go for this dramatic scene and this build-up, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But I don't think either one of them are good enough.
Yeah, if she's in a scene with Giancarlo Esposito as Gideon, or he
can carry that scene.
He's in a scene with Din Djarin, or like that's different. But these characters, they're still pretty new to the Star Wars audience, and the actors are new too. So I think it put too much undue pressure on them. I didn't have a problem with them, but just that it's like that it got lost in the editing room that there wasn't enough intercutting. You know, Star Wars is known for cutting scenes from one to another, and so you have a faster pace. And my main issue was that we had almost 40 minutes of this where there was no cutting back. You know, you could have showed Grief Karga, you could have showed Din Djarin, the Children of the Watch. You could have done a lot of different things to cut back and forth, and they didn't do it. And it just, I feel like they were trying to set it up for the bigger picture of cloning and where things were going, but it didn't work for me. And I know other people may like the episode 3. I didn't really like it, and so maybe it was a little divine intervention.
It had a few cringe moments too. I thought the train scene
where they jumped off the train and landed on a bag.
That was dumb.
And yeah, there were so many scenes like that. I did like the scene in the Star Destroyer when they went in. I'm still confused why they're going to destroy all these remnants of the Empire. And you walk in the ship where the lab is, and there's all these electronic parts that function just well. Why would you destroy all that? It didn't make any sense. And then we have a flashback to Pershing sitting down in the cubicle that our favorite guy from Andor, Cyril, was sitting in, and which just kind of made me recoil a little bit. But you know, at the end of the day, they're setting it up for what I believe, unfortunately, is a tie-in to the sequel trilogy around the cloning, which would lead us to Snoke before we got to the Emperor. My hope is that the cloning aspect leads us to something different around Thrawn with a clone Jedi. I just don't think that'll be the case, but that would be cool, tied back to Timothy Zahn's Heir to the Empire trilogy. That would be super cool, but I don't think that's going to happen. But so anyway, that episode 3, and we spent 40 minutes on Coruscant around Pershing. And this character, Elia Kane, she's obviously working for Gideon. She's a double agent, and she wants to make sure that his memory's erased and that he can't tie them back. She's trying to get to Gideon to free him. And so that leads us into episode 4. And we start out at episode 4, and the Mandalorians are all doing battle exercises, learning how to fight. And you have a pretty funny scene where Grogu's on the beach, and Din thinks he's moving around stones, but they're actual crabs, and he makes him fight the kid that Jimmy Kimmel's nephew saw.
I'm sorry, but that kid's a terrible actor.
I told you he'd be back.
It's on my nerves.
I told you he'd be back.
He's awful.
And we'll get into one of the most laughable things I've seen in any Star Wars show that happened on this episode.
I'll probably get cried for making fun of a kid, but I mean, come on. There's kids that can act. I think Jimmy Kimmel did some favors or something.
Well, yeah.
Maybe he's just a Star Wars fan.
He didn't take his helmet off, so that was good. But you know, Grogu leaps over him, and Din references that he's not the one that trained him how to do that, so we know he's referencing Luke. And then all of a sudden, a dragon flies off with the kid that we know is Ragnar, and his father Paz Vizsla calls him Ragnar in this episode, so they finally say the name Ragnar. And then as we're going through this, it seems like the whole point of this episode was to rally the Mandalorians together. They're building this bond that we know later Bo-Katan is probably going to take advantage of as she rides a Mythosaur and conquers Mandalore. And so I think that this episode served as a way to have Bo-Katan lead and rally the Mandalorians together. The problem with that is the show, even though it's called The Mandalorian, it's been about Din Djarin, and the first 4 episodes of this season has not had much to do with Din Djarin.
No.
I mean, I don't know if you caught that, but it's like, who are the main characters here? Because it's really been, look, I'm a big Katie Sackhoff fan, but it's really been her show.
Yeah.
The first part of the season. And that ties into what I said in an earlier video, probably 2 months ago, where there was a rumor rolling around about a potential new secret series called Ghost Track 17. And if you go back and watch some of our earlier videos, we referenced that. And I said at the time that I believed Ghost Track 17 is based on what artists used to do on their albums, where they'd put a secret track at the end of an album. And knowing Jon Favreau is a fan of the Beatles, there was a ghost track on the end of Abbey Road that is called Her Majesty. And I said at the time that I thought it was going to be about Bo-Katan. And I'm convinced now more than ever that Katie Sackhoff is going to get her own series, and whatever that takes place in or what it's going to be about, I don't know. But
nobody's going to care about that, though.
Yeah, well, yeah.
That's the thing. You're setting up for another series. This is your flagship series right now. It's failing, and you're setting it up for something else that no one's going to watch.
Do you think they're trying to build Bo-Katan up in this series because they know Pedro Pascal's leaving? Do you think that's a possibility?
Well, why would he leave? You think?
I mean, I think it's an easy gig because he doesn't have to take his helmet off. He just reads his lines.
Yeah, I don't think he's leaving. I mean,
yeah, there's been some rumors that he might would leave the show after a certain period of time. So I don't know, because I don't understand why they're doing this, but I am convinced now more than ever that there's some series that she's going to be leading that is going to be the Ghost Track 17 series we've heard about in the last few months. But so they're banding together, and while they do that, they're off trying to find the dragon's lair. They called it a raptor, right?
I don't know. That's such a dumb scene, though, when he spits the kid out. Like he's just...
Oh, no, we're going to get to that in a second. Hold on.
It makes me embarrassed to watch it.
The most laughable thing we've seen in the Star Wars series yet. Hold on. We're going to get there. We are going to get there. But before we do, Grogu walks into the cave with the armor, and she starts to make him a chest plate. And as she's doing that, and she's pounding on the steel, the Beskar, he has the flashback to the Order 66, and which is cool. We all want to see that stuff. I mean, I think it's a good scene, but everyone has speculated that during Order 66, the doors were going to open up. Who was going to save Grogu? We've heard everything from Anakin might save him, which was never going to happen.
No.
To that it would be Palpatine who would take him, to Mace Windu, to the librarian.
It's Jar Jar Binks' voice actor.
Yeah. And so who ends up coming through the doors? Actually saving him when he went into an elevator and then the doors opened up. No other than Ahmed Best, Jar Jar Binks. Yeah. I think it would have been better if they just had Jar Jar Binks come in and save him. But it's Ahmed Best, and
he's a Jedi now.
He's a Jedi now. He had appeared as that character in the Jedi Temple Trial show that was on years ago. So it's not a brand new character. It was where he was teaching kids, and so he shows up. And
so is he that same character from that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he's Kelleran Beck.
Okay.
And so the coolest thing about that scene, though, the one thing I did like is they got to the platform and they got on a Naboo starfighter, which we've seen in the previous prequel movies, and the Naboo guards were there. And so I think we're going to see more. I think we're going to see Kelleran Beck's going to die. I don't think there's any way that this character makes it through because we've had Yoda and then talk about there's no more Jedi, and we already know that Ezra kind of existed and went to the unknown region. So I think we're going to see what ended up happening with Kelleran Beck and Grogu. We're going to see more of that. Why Grogu was traumatized is they made it off the Coruscant. So I'm kind of interested in that because we're going to see that play out. But it was a little anticlimactic. And then we cut back to them getting to the nest, and there's the baby raptors are there, and here comes the mama, and she regurgitates little Ragnar not out of her teeth. He came out of her stomach, and he has nothing on him. He's not wet. He doesn't have. He just shoots out. He's alive, right? Like it.
Yeah, nothing.
No broken bones.
Nah, he's fine.
I guess it's just like what happened with Boba Fett when he came out of the Sarlacc pit, but totally laughable. It took me out of the episode. I know it's suspension of disbelief, but it just seemed like sloppy writing. What did you think about the scene with the birds and the nest? And
I was laughing. That's not something you're supposed to find funny.
And it didn't feel like Star Wars, right?
Well, it just made me embarrassed to watch it. It was like, why am I an adult watching this? Like, that's what it felt like, Like, why am I is this made for me?
Yeah, absolutely. Because we started this series with Mandalorian saying I can take you in hot or I can take you in cold, and he's putting people in carbonite. Like he kills easily, and it's really strange.
It had Book of Boba Fett vibes.
Yeah, it was just
kind of bad.
I was struggling through it, and then they save him, and Paz Vizsla thanks Bo-Katan. They all thank Bo-Katan. So Bo-Katan comes back in, gets the armor put on for the shoulder. She had damage done to one of her armor plates on her shoulder, and she tells the armor, "I have the Night Owl here. I want the Mythosaur," and so she puts it on there, and she's staring at the symbol, and the episode ends. It was a short episode. I didn't need to see any more. This is the first time I've watched 2.5 seasons of Mandalorian where I was frustrated. I didn't like the writing of it. I'm a huge Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau fan. Rarely do I criticize anything they've done. They got a great record. So they deserve the benefit of the doubt for, you're not going to bat 1,000 all the time. So I give them the benefit of the doubt on that. We're going to continue to cover it. But I'm
Do they have full creative control of this?
I don't know.
Yeah.
At this point, after that episode, I think they do. I just think that for whatever reason, the story is gearing towards. Now, keep in mind, we have a few episodes left. We still have the battle with the space pirates on Navarro.
No.
We still have what I believe is going to be a more exploration into what happened with Keller and Beck and Grogu and the Naboo Starfighter. There's going to be a little bit more of that. And then we have the Mythosaur with Bo-Katan. So where's the room for Gideon? I mean, we know he's in this season, but the big bad, I don't know. This episode, I give it a 5 out of 10. I don't think I've given any episode of Mandalorian lower than a 7 since it started.
What did you give last week's?
The last week's, I had a problem with the intercutting of the scenes, but I give it a 7.
Really?
6, maybe 6 or 7, 6.5.
Yeah, I'd give last week's like a 4.
Yeah, you didn't like it. I tolerated it.
I thought it started out good with the dogfight, and then
yeah, the dogfight was great. I liked the Star Destroyer when they were looking for the lab. I like some of the scenes at Coruscant. I just think that it was an editing problem.
Yeah,
I think they could have done some things to make it better, but this one was tough. Final thoughts on episode 4, The Foundling.
Yeah, I'd give it probably a 5. I think
they got some work to do to salvage this season. I'd be interested to see what's going to happen with the ratings the next week or two. Do they lose people?
Well, I don't know. When you look back at when the last time everyone was excited about Star Wars, it was after season 2 during that Luke Skywalker scene.
The high point.
And he appeared in Book of Boba Fett for a little bit.
Gina Carano was fired. Book of Boba Fett comes out. Obi-Wan comes out. All the stuff that's happened with directors being fired. Patty Jenkins' Rogue Squadron gets canceled. Taika Waititi's deal gets canceled. Kevin Feige's deal gets canceled. I mean, like, boom, boom,
It's been
boom,
a downward spiral.
It's been chaos, and I think it's impacted The Mandalorian. I really do. But we'll see. We'll be here to cover it, and we'll see if they can turn it around for the rest of the season. We'll try to stay optimistic. If it's a good episode, we're going to call it like we see it. And remember, leave us a comment below. If you disagree with what we said today or our thoughts, let us know. Tell us what you think. Leave a comment below. Smash the like button. And most importantly, hit subscribe so that we can grow our channel. In the last week, we saw an interview where Damon Lindelof, who was going to be not the showrunner, but the creative mind, the writer, and the creator around the new Star Wars movie. And I said from the very beginning, I've had several videos where I've said, I'll believe it when I see it. And when people said it was a lock, that he's going to be doing it, I didn't believe it. I said that, and now he's out. He initially made some statements that he thought it would be better to not be a cook in the kitchen, but just be someone who eats and is a fan and watches it from the sidelines. And then comes word that he is out, and Stephen Knight is in. And I expect that Stephen Knight, for those that don't know, and I don't know if you're familiar with Stephen Knight, but he was the creator and the writer of Peaky Blinders on Netflix. Did you watch Peaky Blinders?
I've seen the first 3 seasons, which I like Peaky Blinders.
I do too.
I need to go back.
5 or 6.
I need to rewatch it and finish the series. But
Thomas Shelby's great.
Yeah, he's a great character. But it's so far away from Star Wars. I'm curious how.
Yeah, I think it feels like they're scrambling. So we have Stephen Knight is set to write it, and then the bigger issue is Charmin Obey-Chinoy is directing it. And look, I'm for the best person to direct movies, best people to write movies, the best actors to be in films or series. But Charmin Obey-Chinoy has no theatrical experience. She did Miss Marvel on Disney Plus, and then did a documentary that won awards. But you put her in not only a tentpole movie, but a Star Wars movie that maybe the whole future of the franchise rests on. I don't think it's going to happen. They can announce it next month at Star Wars Celebration in London. I don't think it's going to happen.
I don't think they'll announce it if it's. I mean, they'll just can it.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. What are they going to talk about at Celebration? They're going to talk about the Lando series that never happened, the Rangers of the New Republic that never happened, the Taika Waititi movie that's never happened, the Patty Jenkins Rogue Squadron that's never happened. They're going to announce Obi-Wan Season 2.
Yeah, it's a rough time. $5.5 billion they're cutting, so that's just from Lucasfilm, but
and thousands of jobs.
Yeah,
thousands of jobs at Disney. So, look, I like Stephen Knight. I really like Peaky Blinders. I don't think this movie's going to happen. I do think they'll announce something about it at Celebration, just because they've announced things before. She stood up in front of a screen, and we can put that screen up. I'll have my producer put the screen up. When Kathy Kennedy stood in front of all this future content that was going to happen.
Yeah.
And
they have the Acolyte still coming, don't they?
Oh, well, yeah, the Acolyte, of which a producer is suing Lucasfilm, which that's going to get nasty.
Well, why is that? Why?
So she had a memorandum of understanding to start work as a producer on the Acolyte, and then within a few weeks was told she was out, and she's filed a lawsuit against Lucasfilm for a breach of contract. And so it's kind of rare that happens at that level. But again, it's more mud on Kathy Kennedy's feet, right? It's just one. At some point, we all talk about the 80s and the nostalgia of Kathy Kennedy, but at what point, and we'll talk about Victoria Alonso and Marvel in a minute, but at what point do they say, you're the head of this thing, you have to go? We are losing money. We're losing money, and the Star Wars brand could be permanently damaged, if not destroyed. So, to me, there's been the talk. It's not a big secret that she's negotiating a severance package right now to ride off into the sunset around the time of Indiana Jones 5. But every day she's there is one more mess being made.
Yeah, she needs to go.
And whether she's directly responsible for some of these things that have happened or the team's under her, it doesn't matter. She's the person in charge. She's got to go. And so, I think they'll announce something at Celebration, but Damon Lindelof is out, Stephen Knight is in, and we'll see if it ever materializes to anything that comes out. I'm betting it doesn't until we have new leadership at Lucasfilm, and then they completely relaunch Star Wars. And we'll be here to cover that. But Victoria Alonso, so she's been with Marvel for decades and very close to Kathy Kennedy in terms of her position at Marvel, but not quite the name recognition.
Oh, she's right below Kevin Feige.
Right below Kevin Feige. So she's the head of, which is the president of physical production, post-production, VFX, and animation. But the VFX world is probably rejoicing today because she was known as a bully. She was known as, having vendettas. If you didn't side with her on something, you lost work. And so there's, she's also the person that took your favorite franchise, X-Men, and said
it was outdated.
It was outdated and needed to be called the Mutants, and actually said in the office to the employees that you're not to say the word X-Men, you're to say the word mutants. She talked about how the characters and the costumes, the characters of these superheroes are more important than the people playing them. That's why you see Riri Williams playing Iron Man as opposed to Robert Downey Jr. And so just a very divisive figure, and she's out. And so I think
that's a start. That's a good
that's
start.
a start.
Yeah.
It's a start.
She was awful.
Look,
So
I've heard people try to say that Ant-Man Quantumania might be close to breaking even. No way. Anybody who knows anything about numbers and the amount of money that you pull from the theaters when your movies are released, 50 cents on the dollar, and it was over $200 million for the budget for this movie, not including marketing, you needed to make at least $650 to break even. This movie's not even going to make $500 million. So you're talking about at least $125 to $200 million loss. That's one movie. And you have the Marvels, which has been delayed by 7 months, and that's not getting good.
I think that'll make even less.
Yeah, so I think Ant-Man Quantumania was the nail in the coffin for her, and we'll see if Marvel can turn it around. But the ripple effects have started. One thing about Bob Iger is not going to be part of losing money. He's just not. And so they're going to cut costs. They're going to focus on the things that work and that make money. And all the things that have been, I think, in opposition to that, where there's other focus, they better sharpen their resumes, because I think that they're out. And there's already a list. It's been reported. There's lists of people that are on the way out, of Lucasfilm, of Marvel, of other aspects of Disney. So we'll see what happens. But we'll be here to cover that. You think it's a good first step?
Yeah, I think it's a great first step. I mean, when he took over, a lot of people blame where Disney is right now because of him. They thought that Bob Chapek was never, ever really in charge to begin with.
Right.
So, I mean, it depended on, he needed to get rid of some bad apples, and I think Victoria Alonso was one of those. One of the worst.
And it sends a message, right? If you get rid of her, it sends a message to everybody else. You better get in gear.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good start.
Yeah.
Right. That's at least a good start. So we'll see where he goes. But I mean,
Kathy's got to be gone. She's got to be gone.
There's quite a few people there though that need to go. So I mean, he's got a lot more work to do, I think, if he wants to turn some of these brands around. But we'll see.
One of the reasons why they have to turn it around is because of a threat that's looming, and we're going to talk about that right now. On the flip side of what's being done right, I just got back from Orlando, where I took the family, and we spent time at both Universal parks and Disney parks. And Harry Potter, who is just launched Hogwarts Legacy, the video game, which I think is a top 5 game right now of all time already. It's made billions of dollars. They are opening a third gate at their theme parks. So for those that have been down there or haven't been down there, they have Universal Studios and they have Islands of Adventure, of which Harry Potter has a presence at both. You go to Islands of Adventure and you see Hogwarts and you see Hogsmeade, and you walk through the streets, and it's all themed. You can't buy Coca-Cola there because it doesn't fit within Harry Potter world. So you can buy butterbeer and buy the wands at Ollivander's, and there's everything that matches the Harry Potter universe. And then you get on the Hogwarts Express, and it takes you via train to the other park, and now you're in the underground of London, and you take a left, and you go to Diagon Alley, and you do the Gringotts ride.
So you thought it was a much better theme park experience than Disney?
Yeah, because you get the fast passes, and you can experience the shortened lines of waits in line to ride the rides, whereas Disney has the genie and doesn't apply to most of the good rides, and you end up having to get these virtual queues that within 30 seconds of the queue launching, you're locked out, and their focus on the customer is not near to the level of what it was. I've been to Disney probably 7 or 8 times at every park, so I've seen the focus on the customer go down each time over the years. And Universal has stepped it up. They have 4 or 5 resorts now. We stayed at the Hard Rock Resort, and we took a river taxi to Universal. And so we were all hearing about Super Mario Brothers coming out in April, the movie. People are talking about it everywhere. Posters up, signs. We heard about the new Epic Universe Third Gate theme park, of which Super Nintendo is going to launch in 2025 in the Epic Universe Park, the Third Gate, so the third park. And it's already launched, I think, in California. But in Florida, it's launched. And you're going to have a new part of Harry Potter land in the new Third Gate. And what's really cool about this is we're getting some details around it, and it ties into the Ministry of Magic, and so which is located in London. And it will feature an attraction that transports guests to the Ministry of Magic via flu powder. And the speculation is from some of the plans and maps that we've seen is that it has a Paris style to it, and the sights of Paris when you enter, and the copy of the Port Saint Denis Arch, and also it would be based on Place Cachet, which was kind of a reference to Fantastic Beasts. But what we're hearing in reports is that it's not, the time frame of this is not going to be based in the Fantastic Beasts era. It's going to be in the base time era of the books, Harry Potter. So we're going to see a ride that involves the evil Dolores Umbridge at the Ministry of Magic. Reportedly, the actor Imelda Staunton has signed on to reprise her role for the ride. And so you're seeing this growth from Universal. The resorts are fantastic, customer focused. The transportation to the parks.
Well, who's doing the Mario movie? Illumination.
Yeah, Illumination. Yeah. So, who did Minions and
right. So there's no doubt in my mind there's nothing Disney's going to come out with in that branch that's going to touch Mario in terms of box office. There's nothing that Pixar's...
I think Super Mario is going to be the #1 movie of the year, and I think Dead Reckoning Part 1 with Tom Cruise is going to be #2. Flash may do well, but I don't think it's going to get to the level of those two movies. Tom Cruise is riding Top Gun Maverick success, and we've got Super Mario. Based on you could feel it down to the park. Everybody's excited about Super Mario, and the experience is different. The Epic Universe, if it wasn't for Universal, Disney wouldn't have been adding Tron and Guardians of the Galaxy. They're doing it as a response to Universal's growth. Mm-hmm. And Universal is focusing on the customer. When you go ride Velociraptor in Jurassic World and you go see all parts of Harry Potter, which is totally immersive, it's a buzz. You feel it. It's a different experience right now that you used to have at Disney that's not there right now. You go into Galaxy's Edge. I grew up the biggest Star Wars fan on the planet. They don't even have anybody in costume walking around. I didn't see anybody. So, I wanted to cover that. We're excited about it. I wanted to give you a little bit of information for Harry Potter fans about the third gate and the new park that's being developed, and the Dolores Umbridge and the Ministry of Magic ride that's going to be coming. It's exciting news. Final thoughts on that? Is that something you're looking forward to?
Yeah, I mean, with theme parks, you go way more than I do. I think
I have kids.
Yeah, I have kids. They're just younger, but
yeah, get ready.
Yeah, I've been to Universal twice, and I loved it both times. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's nice to see. It's interesting to see Disney just kind of fall off in all aspects. It's crazy, just from movies to streaming to now the theme parks. It seems like they're just collapsing in all areas, which is kind of disappointing. But
well, listen, sometimes you have to hit rock bottom before you make the necessary changes to get back on top. And I think Disney will get back there, hopefully. Maybe they won't. Maybe it's Universal's time. Maybe it's Warner DC's time. We'll see. But we'll be here to cover that. Next topic is, in the gaming world, Gears of War. Did you play Gears of War?
I did. Yep.
So Gears of War is coming to Netflix. And we now know that they have a writer. And it's John Spates, who wrote Dune. Was a writer on the first Dune movie. And the first Doctor Strange movie, which I really liked.
Yeah.
I really liked the first Doctor Strange. So Gears of War, I think it's trying to ride that success of The Last of Us. We have different views on The Last of Us, but
it's a totally different kind of game, though.
And we know Warhammer 40K is coming out from Amazon. That's a different type of game.
Well, Gears is more, Space Marines, aliens. It's totally different than It's sci-fi as opposed to post-apocalyptic. So it actually has more in common with Warhammer than.
So is this a new wave of games that are being developed into series and movies? We got Last of Us. We know God of War's coming out. Yep. We have Warhammer 40K. We now have Gears of War. So very interesting. It's a bona fide, credible writer, John Spates, Dune, Doctor Strange. Wanted to just talk about that. Is that something? Do you have faith that Netflix could pull that off? Because they haven't had a great record with movies.
Yeah, I mean, some of their adaptations have been awful, so I don't know. We'll see. I mean, they've kind of been getting pounded too.
Yeah, we need to see director. We need to see the casting.
Okay, yeah, that's what.
And that's going to tell us more. But we have a writer.
It's a cool game though, and it could be a cool TV show. So I'm excited about it.
Or movie.
I'm optimistic about it. But I mean, like I said, I'll have to see what who's involved in it.
Yeah.
You know.
Speaking of games, and to wrap up here, our last topic of the day, Henry Cavill, our guy Henry Cavill. Big fan of Henry Cavill. He's got 3 movies coming out. He's got Argyle, which is a spy thriller. He's got The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, which is a World War II film directed by Guy Ritchie and produced by Jerry Bruckheimer, so there'll be a lot of explosives. And he's got a new movie coming out called Rogue, where he's a Navy SEAL that takes matters into his own hands. And he's also developing Warhammer 40K for Amazon. So our boy Henry Cavill, he left The Witcher. He got booted out as Superman, but he's staying busy. And we're here to cover it. I support pretty much anything he does. I haven't really seen anything Henry Cavill's been in that I haven't liked or that he hasn't been good in.
Yeah, I think I've liked pretty much everything he's been in.
Yeah, he's pretty credible. So wanted to talk about Henry and what he's got going on. Rogue is the newest film on the slate for him, and we're excited to hear about that. And we'll hear more about the other projects, Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, and also Warhammer 4K over the next couple months. We'll be here to cover it. But if you like what you heard today, if you want to leave us a comment, tell us what you think. Also, smash that like button, and most importantly, hit subscribe so that we can grow our channel. And TCB.